Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, what I like to do is I like to get people to know you. So, first question I usually ask is like, where are you from? Like, what did your parents do?
Okay, I'm from Shanghai, China. My father was a high school principal. My mother is a pediatrician.
And so, and I think we talked before, but like I think you were talking more about when you started, when you were in China, it was more communist than it is now. So how did you make your way here to the United States?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. In early 1980s, and my mother contacted a relative of mine who lives in Kansas City, Missouri, and this relative was very helpful, and they applied college for me, and they did all the paperwork. So I still remember, like one morning, out of the blue, my mother came to my room and said, "You're going to the United States." I was, oh yeah, so I was, I was surprised because I was, when I was growing up, I thought I would be living in China all my life, and then one morning, my mother came in and said, "Well, you're going to the U.S." I did all the paperwork, rather my relative did all the paperwork for me. So, and I still remember at that time, my father was not in favor of doing that because, in China, as you know, usually they want to have parents would like to have kids nearby. They don't want to have kids go far away places, right? So, I was young. I was, at that time like 20. Not really young, but for my parents, I was not ready to go, such a far journey. So my father was not in favor of that. So my mother somehow convinced my father, and so that was in the fall of 1981.
So was it a big culture shock coming? Or did you know English, or did you have to learn English while you
Well, I was able to read, English, reasonably well, but my speaking, English was very poor, and the listening was poor as well. So, and we can talk about that later on. I had a hard time in my first semester here because when I arrived here, I didn't know much about how challenging the courses might be. So I selected a lot of very difficult courses for me. I selected the history, American history, music appreciation, and also even like art appreciation, and all of them were very difficult for me as a non-native speaker.
So the easy classes were like math and the physics or something.
Right. I thought that they would be easy, but I underestimated the importance of language. So
I think you got your. So did you get your PhD in physics?
Yes.
And then what was your first job after that? After you got your.
With the Micron technology, and Micron is at Boise, Idaho, a place well known for two chips. Potato chips and computer chips, and so I remember, where I was graduating, I sent out a lot of resumes, and a couple of places called, not a lot of places, but Micron was one of them, and the reason I decided to go there was, it's kind of closer to the graduate study I did at Pennsylvania State University, where I received my PhD.
So it was like a match to your graduate work?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So I don't even know where to start with you. So what was your first startup? Like what was your first startup that you actually...
Okay, so the first startup I really would call like a half startup. The reason was so after graduation, I went to Micron Technology, and later on, Motorola had a recruiter hired me away from Micron. So I worked at a Motorola Austin, Texas fabrication lab for computer chips. And then I was hired away by Rockwell International. So we moved I remember we moved to California. By the way, I did live in California many years ago. It was in Irvine, California. Okay. I remember it was a really good time because I remember taking my kids, to the beach every day. It was very nice. And, nice. By the way, I forgot to introduce my wife, Sherry Yu, who is back there, and also Trisha Legend, who is a VP of U.S. operations, and who, by the way, is a local of Sacramento. So
Trisha's actually well known here. Yeah. So she's so we all actually all know her. Most of us know her.
So make a long story short. So I was thinking, I would be living the rest of my life in sunny California, but that did not happen because there is a Boston company and a hired recruiter started calling me every night. Because initially, when the first time he called me, I said no. I just arrived in California and we just settled. We didn't want to go anywhere else. But this recruiter, his name is Harlan Yang, and he was ready to retire. But he had a lot of experience in recruiting, so he kept calling, and eventually he became a good friend of my wife and myself. So in the end, I was persuaded by him. So we left Southern California for Chicago. I remember when we left California, it was like 50 or 60, degree Fahrenheit here. But when we arrived in Chicago, it was 30 degrees, below with wind chill factor. Yeah. So anyway, make a long story short. Minus. Yeah. So big temperature swing. So make a long story short, this Boston company just started a small division, and they needed someone from the industry to lead their R&D effort. Mm-hmm. So they recruited me away from Rockwell International out of Southern California to lead their research and development. Now, strictly speaking, I'm still working for a company, but in reality, we had to start from ground zero because we didn't have anything. So I led a team of people, developed a product, which eventually sold, had an international sales accumulatively close to $4 billion. So that's the first venture. So with the money from a parent company, our team did everything else, from research and development, to marketing, to sales, to eventually we went to IPO.
So you said $4 billion, right?
Yeah, $4 billion in sales, and cumulatively. So it was like 1997. So that's almost 20 years ago. So since then you had like roughly $300 million in annual sales for that product line.
So but what was your first company that you actually started? Like, did you ever start like hey, I'm gonna get these guys together and put together a startup?
Yes. So after this success with the first, half startup, I would say, we acted like an entrepreneur, but the money was given by the parent company. Right. So not to the true startup in the sense of a VC eyes. So that was in 2000. The company went to IPO. Everything was great. Then I'm thinking about my next career. Realizing maybe I could be going on alone, right, with experience, and because company was already in very good shape, right. Went to IPO. At that time, company had over 700 people. So I was thinking about maybe I could, do a startup on my own. So at that time, I went back to China and started the true first startup. And I remember when I was about to start the company, I talked to a number of friends and also experts in the field. They all said, no, don't do that. It's too risky. The reason is your competitors will be the companies like DuPont, Hitachi Chemical, because at that time I was...
What was the product for your startup?
Was reagents, for chemical. It's a chemical formulation.
Okay.
It's a chemical formulation used for IC industry, used for computer chip fabrication. So during the computer chip fabrication, the chip surface has to be polished. If you cut a cross section, I don't know how many of you have seen a cross section of a computer chip. If you do a cross section of a computer chip, it looks like a building. It has many layers. Each layer consists of a conducting material. Right. So each, by that time, the minimum feature size has shrunk to the point you have to planarize wafer surface at every level. So the product was is a kind of liquid. It's a liquid with abrasives, with chemical components in the solution, and use this to polish wafer surface at every level.
So it's like, is it like a glue almost between each layer, or just a
Well, it's kind of liquid. It's more like a milk,
okay?
you know,
So
kind of like milk,
did
but
you
with
come
the.
up with this? Where did you come up with this idea?
Well, this idea was originally come up with IBM. However, at that time the material, the consumable we call, was way behind. You see, the semiconductor industry were ready to use this leading edge technology. However, there was no supplier able to provide it.
Oh, so you saw the need.
So we saw the need, and of course that there are other companies. I'm not saying we are the only one, but at that time there was a need to come up with new formulations, new chemical solutions to be used for IC industry.
So did you go back to China? So why did you go back to China to start the company as opposed to maybe staying here?
Well, at that time, two reasons. One was my parents. When they had immigrated to the U.S., but at that time they returned to China.
Okay.
So that's I wanted to be
Sure.
with my parents. The second reason.
Very good son, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. The second reason was I sensed that there are more opportunities in China, and which turned out to be the correct, perception. And so I went back to China, and started this company.
One thing, was it easier to get the talent to work on your project?
One is talent, one is I would say more needs, because at that time all those chemicals need to be imported from overseas, and which makes the product more more expensive, and also logistically more difficult, and also services were relatively poor.
So that's why China was a better place to manufacture the solution.
Manufacture, and also for local applications,
Okay.
because a lot of fabs were being built
That's
at that time. So I sensed that, at that time, because China is building more manufacturing plants, so there is a need for local manufactured, chemical components, which will be more cost effective, better service without a need for ocean shipping.
So what happened to that? What happened to that? That's the second startup that you had.
The second startup, we applied over 100 patents, and that company is doing very well. And last year, it had sales over $30 million.
Did it get acquired by?
No, still stand alone, and
really?
and I'm still one of the shareholders and a board member. And because later I will tell you, I left the company to start Anpac.
So that's sort of interesting, because when I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, you have a PhD in physics,
Right.
and you're developing cutting edge technology in the medical field. So how did you make that transaction from a physicist to the medical field?
That's a very good question. In fact, in between, I also become a chemist.
Oh, okay.
So the second project really is a chemist.
Hobby.
So I did everything. So I also skipped to the first one, where I went at a college entering exam. I admitted to medical school in China, and because of partially color blindness, so after one semester of study at a college, they did another physical exam, and at that time, I didn't know that before. I'm partially colorblind, which means I have difficulty in distinguishing blue color from green color. So according to the school, I'm not suited to be a physician, and therefore they advised me to switch my major. That's why I switched to physics. So after I started in the industry, as I mentioned to you, hired by this Boston company, and the company really, their product is also solution. So I become a chemist. So what's interesting is I mentioned that at UCD's invited talk about game-changing innovation is, it seems to me very interesting is an outsider. In fact, very often, if you think big, an outsider can become really a game-changing technologist. And there is a profound reason for that. The reason is, as you accumulate more and more knowledge in a specific field, one's vision becomes narrower. And in fact, one misses the big innovation.
Right.
So only outsiders go into a new field without any limitations without any constraints, can think big.
Or they bring in industry expertise from another field that
That's
they
right.
apply.
That's right.
So I've seen that. I've seen that with a couple of our speakers.
So in fact, if you look at the human history, a lot of major innovations are not made by experts in the field rather than outsider. And we can go on many examples. So my second job was as a chemist at this Boston company, and being a physicist, I was given a task to develop a formulation. So I thought out of the box along with my team member. We actually innovated a new mechanism, a new surface chemistry mechanism, and which really give us an enhanced game-changing performance. Therefore, this product, since it's launched in 1997 until today, was never dislodged by other technologies so far. So for the last almost 20 years, even though our cellular phones have changed many suppliers, many generations, the product actually dominated. It's a subspace globally, and in fact, Samsung uses it, Intel uses it, and IBM. So global IC manufacturers all use this leading-edge technology for the last 20 years. In fact, it's being used for your computers, your cell phones. In fact, I would say if this material stopped producing, IC industry will be shut down.
Wow. So how did you go from that to? It sounds like the next thing was Anpac Bio.
That's right.
So how did you go from being a physicist and then you have this sort of silicon solution to going into this blood test, and we'll talk about actually how did you go into that, and then I'll go more specific into Anpac Bio. So how did you make that transition?
Okay, so by 2008, I was well on the second project, started making revenue. I remember in 2008 we generated close to $3 to $4 million dollars, and then I met Professor Herbert Yu of Yale University. Now his last name is also Yu, Y-U, who happened to be my cousin.
Oh, really?
And so anyway, so he was.
Did you know he was your cousin?
Of course,
Okay.
we grew up.
All right.
So-
you said you met him, like, oh, okay.
The reason I met him because I was already back to China working in Shanghai, and he was visiting his parents from Connecticut, because he was working at the School of Medicine at Yale University, and his expertise has always been cancer research. He received his MD and also PhD in clinical biochemistry. And so he is a classic biomedical person,
Right.
has been working on cancer research for the last 20, 30 years.
You're the
And
physicist
I'm the
slash chemist.
physicist slash chemist. And I did do some diagnostics before, but not for medical application. So I invited him for dinner. And during the dinner, we were talking about his work. That suddenly it had occurred to me, maybe my background in physics in a different industry can help him to solve the problem he has, because he's not a physics guy. He's not even a device guy. But yet, for the cancer diagnostics, one requires medical device. So I thought he knows the application, he knows what is required for cancer detection. I'm the hardware guy. Maybe I'm able to team up with him to have a cross-disciplinary collaboration to come up with a new idea. So that's a thought.
So did the idea come from dinner, or it was just the idea was just to collaborate?
Collaborate to come out of dinner,
Okay.
but as I thought more, I did some more literature search, empirical search, looked at the landscape of cancer diagnostics, and I finally realized a lot of things I did in the past could be very helpful for cancer diagnostics, because classically, as I mentioned before, when one always working in the same field, one becomes entrenched. In the area of cancer diagnostics, it's the same way. People usually are from
Right.
biochemistry, usually are from medicine, biology, biochemistry, etc. So the approach is always either genetics approach, biomarker approach, or cellular approach, but they don't think about from other aspects.
So was the Was the idea to create what Anpac? Well, we'll talk about this. What Anpac Bio is developed now, or was that sort of accidental as as you collaborated?
I think it's not accidental. At least it's not by purely accidental, or it's a designed accidental. I would say because draw upon my past experience, and we developed a blood-based, just with a simple, easy blood draw, without very complicated process. We stick it into a fully automated machine. We're able to do a broad screening of over 10 types of cancer within a few minutes.
Okay, so I'll take this. So what you made this part where you talk about what Anpac Bio is.
Okay.
So the people that don't know, so this is where I probably should have gone here first. What does Anpac Bio do?
Okay, so Anpac Bio's mission is to screen cancer patients in general population. See, right now we felt the cancer prevention is not sufficiently done. Some people don't do physical, or even if people do annual physical, they don't go through the full set of cancer screening processes. And on the other hand, the existing technology has very strong limitations to sufficiently screen for cancer patients, especially early stage cancer patients. For example, I'll give you an example. For esophageal cancer, which has a global annual incidence of 500,000 patients, there's no biomarker to screen for it. The only way to look for esophageal cancer is through endoscope, which is painful, not easily to be done, and not cost effective. So basically, at least for esophageal cancer, it's not being screened. And also brain tumor is not being screened. A lot of cancer sites to date, even in the most advanced country like the United States, is not being checked. Not to mention annually, some of them may have never been screened for at least 50% of the cancer sites. That's just our study. Our study has shown a lot of cancer types are not being screened for average population. So Anpac's goal is to make cancer screening affordable and sensitive, and with ability to screen early, to catch early stage cancer patients, and make it, more importantly, to make it available to everyone.
So basically what I understand is you take a small blood sample.
That's right.
And it gets sent to...
A simple blood draw.
And how much blood are you taking out?
2 cc's.
2 cc, so that's like this much?
Right. That's right.
All right.
Yeah.
And then you go through some apparatus, and it spits out
a set of data, right?
That you may, or how many cancers does it test against? Or
over 10.
Over 10?
Yeah, close to 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
So basically, if something's triggered, then that means that you go back and check to see if
that's right. So what we are doing is for general population, people who have no symptoms. See, the danger of cancer is...
That's so cool, by the way.
In stage 1, thank you. In stage 1 and stage 2, there's no symptom. See, the risk of cancer, even though cancer is classified a chronic disease, however, the danger of cancer is, cancer is divided into 4 stages, stage 1, 2, 3, 4. And but the issue is very often cancer has no symptom until the very last stage, stage 4.
Or it's almost too late.
Yeah, so by that time it's too late. That's why you have, what's the number? 12 million people die every year globally from cancer. And this number is increasing. Even though it's decreasing in the United States because of cancer prevention efforts initiated 10, 20 years ago. But globally, the cancer death is 12 million annually, and in fact, it's increasing. And also cancer discovery, cancer incidence rate is also increasing globally.
So your solution is now approved in China right now?
Right.
And
we received our first license in China, but we have not approved in the US, but we are going through, we are teaming up with medical groups, including the ones local here in Sacramento, like Dignity Health. And we are teaming up with them, and we are going to start a clinical trial in the next quarter.
That's fantastic. But right now, it is being. Your solution has actually been approved in China, and then people are actually using it in China?
Yes, we screen. We already. So far we have accumulated over 35,000 cases, out of which 20,000 we will call retrospective. Retrospective means, in working with hospitals to validate our technology on non-cancer patients versus non-healthy group. But we also have screened, so that's a real deal. We also have screened close to 25,000 health, general population. People have no symptoms, out of which we have actually screened out at least 20 people with early stage cancer or early stage or pre-cancer stage patients. And this.
That were already told they were healthy.
Okay.
Those individuals had no symptoms. Some of them had physicals, passed physicals, without any given evidence or test parameters, abnormal parameters. But yet, when they come to our test, we flagged them out as a high cancer risk individuals that we send them back to the hospitals. And then when hospital did a more thorough examination, they were confirmed to be cancer patients.
Yeah.
And we had early stage esophageal cancer patient. We have stage 1 lung cancer patient. We have stage 1 gastric cancer patient. And many of them wrote thank you notes, thank you letters to us. So this technology is not in the future, like many companies here claim somewhere. If you read the cancer reports, a lot of them draw a nice rosy picture, but unfortunately not for today. For 5 years from now on, 10 years from now on, but our technology is here, is today, is being used for screening every day. And we are catching early stage cancer patients on a weekly basis. The cases are accumulating very fast. Even if, in fact, I just arrived 4 days ago, and even after I arrived here, we had a new case discovery back in China. So this thing is not a fancy story. See, in our fight against the cancer, unfortunately, we had a lot of, I will call false starts. Scientists claim the problem is solved. You can go back to read newspapers 50 years ago, 40 years ago, claiming cancer will be solved in 5 years. It hadn't been solved.
Yeah. So I had to ask this. So as you're developing your solution, is it like I was actually wondering, is it like Thomas Edison, where you just tried a bunch of stuff and this worked and this doesn't work, or was it more thorough, like
We were luckier than Thomas Edison. we didn't try thousands of materials until he hit tungsten filaments.
Right.
Unfortunately, we didn't try that many. But in fact, one thing we haven't never published is, by the way, the cancer detection has been published in over 10 technical articles, including ASCO, which stands for American Society of Clinical Oncologists. So most reputable, technical, conferences worldwide. So we published 4 articles year before last year. We published one last year. And we also, if anyone is interested in, there is one conference under ASCO, organized by ASCO, will be held in San Francisco next week on the 19th, where we have another paper accepted, which is for colon cancer. We have a colon cancer screening technology article accepted by that conference and will be published next week in San Francisco.
Oh. So when, now that I don't know much about the medical, but now the FDA, you're going through clinical trials, how long will it take to get to market?
That's a good question. There are 2 types, so-called 510K by FDA, which is generally considered to be lower, I would say, lower grade. I wouldn't use lower grade. Maybe it's a lower threshold, acceptance. And then something which is more complicated, which you call a PMA. And what's more complicated, if this screening will impact physicians' decision on the patients, it will be considered to be a more involved kind of test, impact more. Now, I have to emphasize all our tests are called IVD, which is outside the body. which does not impact the patient's individual's health.
Right.
It's a simple blood draw. So in general, it's easier to be passed by FDA. And FDA, in this case, mainly look at efficacy, how effective this test is, or rather how effective this test is compared with other existing detection technologies. So 510K roughly 1 year, and a PMA, which is a more difficult, I would say test, it would be like 1.5 to 2 years.
So with any luck, in a year or so, you'll be able to go to market here in the United States?
That's right.
Oh.
Yeah.
So are you looking for investment right now?
Yes, we are. We are in discussions with some investors.
I know people that know. It
Yeah.
sounds. So actually, we were talking beforehand, and there was and I forget the name of the company, but there was another company that sounds like they do something similar. They're almost like fraud. They just you're a Silicon Valley.
Serranos, yeah.
Serranos, yeah. And
Yeah.
I was actually reading about it. And it looked like they had a lot of investors, and it looks like their solution doesn't actually work. So has that impacted you, or are you
No.
more scrutiny because of
But
that?
only made us more attractive because we're quite different. If you really analyze our company with their company, we are proven industry veterans, in innovation. I'm an inventor of close to 300 patents. In fact, many patents are used in high volume production, not just paper patents. Sometimes you have paper patents filed, spend the money but never used. But I'm very gratified. I'm very fortunate to not, to have that many patents issued as me as inventor, but assigned to the companies I worked for, but generating financial results for those companies. And so we are proven team of people. That's one. Second,
Street cred.
yeah, so we actually have really developed something. On the other hand, we don't have any well-known people on our board, which is a good sign. You would think if you have well-known people on the board, it's good. No, it's a contrary indicator. If this company relies on, actors and actresses and politicians to be on the board, it's not a good sign. That's a problem with that company because they have Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State on the board, which is alarming sign. Because if you're a diagnostic company, which is a high-tech company, why you need politicians on your board?
That's true. Better have
And
something more technical.
And secondly, I do graduate from college with a PhD degree. I'm not saying people with no degrees cannot be innovative. Steve Jobs is one of them, and did not graduate. Well, maybe graduate with a BS, but certainly Bill Gates did not graduate, but still very successful, but mostly in IT. But that lady actually dropped out of college very young, and the problem is she never had successful track record, and also to our knowledge, they never published, and we did.
So are your patents? I know have you applied for the patents here in the United States, or?
Yes.
Okay.
We actually filed over 151 patents globally.
For Anpac Bio.
Yeah, by Anpac Bio,
Wow.
just with the cancer diagnostics.
That's a lot of legal work too.
And we paid $2 million for patents alone. This project, we invested over $20 million. Yeah.
So I have to ask you, how did you end up picking Sacramento to be the new base?
Well, a couple of factors, actually we were thinking about, Silicon Valley, for our
you don't wanna
headquarters.
go
So we were thinking about Silicon Valley, but but of course, Drisha played a role. But more importantly, as I coming here tomorrow, I felt I was impressed by the people here in the community, in Sacramento, very friendly, and there is a sense of community, and also the people I met, and also Mayor Johnson played an important role, and the president of great city of Sacramento, Barry Broom played an important role. So basically, and also another important thing is, Sacramento is where there are a lot of medical groups, a lot of hospitals here. So you have a supply chain, you have customers here, you have a networking here.
You have the talent, you have the background from UC
And
Davis.
right, and a good school in UC Davis, and also and also the cost of living is lower,
Yeah.
which may be helpful for our future employees.
It'll give you a longer runway, too.
Yeah.
A lot longer runway.
And good for retention, and so there are a number of factors. Yeah,
We're glad you chose here.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask one more question before I go. So what advice would you give to entrepreneurs? You know, there's a lot of entrepreneurs here.
Right, some are not very successful. So I'm just, I think a couple of things. One is you need to believe in yourself. Because when I look back, the three things I did, almost every time I try to do something, you will hear people who encourage you and also people who discourage you.
Right.
And so, my advice is that you really need to believe in yourself, believe in your team, believe in your mission and vision, and not to be persuaded by naysayers. So you need to be confident, and also you have to be persistent, because the journey of innovation, journey of startup can be very treacherous, can be long, can be difficult. Sometimes you may feel you are very lonely along this journey, and so you need to be very strong. You need to be very persistent. And another thing is, just to share with you is you may be the only one to make this project work, or you may be the only one on this planet to have this invention. But sometimes you may hear, VCs tell you, a lot of smart people on this planet, everything you thought about, other people thought. Actually, that's totally wrong, by the way, because you only have one Isaac Newton, you only have one Einstein, because each of us is created differently. I can say for sure, not just because to motivate the people, the listener, to say that every individual, if you have the right idea, if you have the right skill, you are maybe the only one to make this project, this innovation on the planet, and no one can replace you. And I really honestly believe that. And I've been fortunate enough to go through this 3 times. Our first innovation, even to date, no one surpassed it. I'm talking about a product with a Boston company.
Right.
We developed in 1997. It's almost 20 years. There are so billions of people on the planet, not a single one passed that product. And I don't see in the near future anyone will pass it. It may be the best record ever. And you can do that.
Looks like you're
And-
batting on her.
And I do believe this Anpac project will repeat what we did with the first project.
Wow.
And our goal is very simple. We have to have a sustained, innovation which cannot be surpassed in 10, 20 years. That's a true innovation.
That's true. So with that, I'm going to open up questions to the audience. Greg?
Yes.
You've had 3 careers.
Uh-huh.
That's what it feels like.
Yes.
And
Maybe more to come.
let me step back. First, I want to say best of luck with the current career, because it affects all of us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
We still have more work to do. Yeah, so, yeah.
Well, hurry up and save more lives.
but what, I want to just get in your head about when you pivoted from
Mm-hmm.
career to career,
Mm-hmm.
what triggered in your brain that said, I need to shift?
That's a very good question. Well, going back, I think I'm the person easily to get bored. Every time, you reached a certain stability, I thought, well, that's not interesting.
Yeah.
Give you example, in 2000, our company went to IPO, and I was promoted to VP of R&D. I was the, maybe number 2 guy, just below CEO of that company. And I was making a lot of money. And, but for whatever reason, I was not happy. Because when you become very successful, I remember I was attending all kind of executive meetings. We were doing budgets, doing, this and that. I felt, I was totally bored. I think I'm a person really want to do from a scratch, clean piece of paper. I want to build things, starting from ground zero. So when I get bored, I decided to go back to China, start the first venture, first true venture. But by 2010, which when the first company, true, startup company hit a revenue of like, I think it's somewhere between $6 and $7 million, and everything was going well. Again, I felt, I got bored. We had we didn't have any issue. Every time, every day I went to work, every time come back to work, and nothing was exciting, nothing to be built, nothing to be challenged. So I get bored again. Then, of course, in 2008, I met Herbert Yu. We started thinking about this cancer diagnostic project. So finally, in 2010, I decided to leave that company because I was involved in day-to-day operation with the company. So I left the company, I retained my shares, and I'm still a board member, but I'm no longer involved with the day-to-day operations, so started Anpac. So I guess, one has to have some curiosity, and one has to, has very energetic, wanted to do something different. I'm not saying, everybody needs to, learn from me in that respect, because, I still remember my father also said, you did well, and that you should enjoy your, fruit rather than just leave and do something again. So I'm not saying, this decision is right or wrong. Just to answer your question, I think every time when things go well, I get bored, and I wanted to do something more challenging.
So when you get bored, then good things happen then.
I'm happy you didn't get bored with me, though.
No, you have to have something constant, right? You cannot change everything, so,
They've been married
so.
30 years.
Bravo.
I believe in conservation, right? So if you get bored with something, you have to be very stable in some other things. Law of conservation, right? So
I see a romantic too.
I think this group would be really interested in hearing what you told me when you took over for the R&D and you gave your team their directions and then you walked out the door.
yeah, okay. Yeah, that was a story, that's something about how do you know? That's one thing people sometimes ask. How do you know this project is truly innovative, is really game-changing? Actually, it's very simple. Now, the answer may be surprising to you. First indicator is all the experts are against you. If all experts tell you this is a bad idea, it's not going to work, the idea is either is really dumb, it really is bad, or it's the best idea ever. Right? It's two extremes, right? Either it's really bad, everyone can see it, or this idea is so good, experts cannot envision it. And often that's the case. I can cite many examples. If you, I don't know how many musicians here.
We have one in the other room.
Do you know the best violin concerto ever written was by Tchaikovsky? Violin concerto in D major, the best violin composition ever written, maybe ranked the top 10. And when Tchaikovsky wrote this piece and dedicated to a Hungary, virtuoso, violin virtuoso, and this violin virtuoso actually rejected this piece and saying it's not good because he cannot play the way the composer intended to, because certain passages were not sound, to the desire of the composer. And when the poor Tchaikovsky, in fact, his best piano composition dedicated to Rubinstein, who was the greatest pianist ever lived, and who also rejected this piece. So if we look at the human history, the best things, when it just come out, actually it was not accepted. Now here's my own story. And I remember, so I went to this Boston company, and the company was very nice. They gave me a team of people. They're all very talented scientists. People graduated from PhD from Michigan, University of Michigan, people from Johns Hopkins University, top schools in this country. So I get them together. I shared with them the idea for this particular product we're going to work on, and also set the performance targets. We discussed for a little while. It's not a one-way. So what I'm saying is a two-way communication. But they were very polite. They did not give me many feedbacks. Then I left the room. So half an hour later, one of the guys, with that group, sneaked into my office saying, what happened, Chris, when you left? They said, you are crazy. This product was never going to work because, this mechanism couldn't work.
And so how did you overcome that?
I encourage them to continue to work on it.
Oh, you just pushed them?
I just pushed them. So within a year, the product come out and test it with very good results. So one of those guys come back to my office and said, Chris, you were right, we were wrong. We actually doubted this product may never work. So what I'm saying is it's very simple to test your idea, whether it's good or bad, or whether it's a truly good idea. Is if a lot of people don't think it's going to work, it's highly likely you either have the best idea or you have the worst idea. It's very simple to test it. In fact, I can tell you, most experts are wrong. I'll give you another interesting story. There's a MIT professor called, I think it's Stanford professor, Professor Ding, Asian American. And he was awarded the Nobel Prize for the discovery of an elementary particle called quarks. In fact, when he was designing the experiment, see, the way to discover elementary particles, is you accelerate two rays of atoms at the highest possible velocity and let them to collide. Right. The bigger the collision, the higher the energy collide, the more you deep look into the subatomic structures. So he was designing the biggest collider at that time, which was very expensive. At that time, there was a prominent physicist who had already obtained the Nobel Prize, and also in elementary particle. And he said, no, Professor Ding, don't do that. It's very cost effective. It's very expensive. Don't do that. The main reason it's not because it's expensive. The main reason is we have discovered all the elementary particles. There are no more elementary particles to be found. And Professor Ding resisted his idea, and he continued with the construction of the collider, continued with the collision. In the end, he did discover a new type of particles. Now the story goes, when this gentleman heard, indeed, Professor Ding, through his collision, find new particles. He joked, I did not know God created more new particles.
You also had to convince the people to pay for that. Do you have a question?
Yeah. Did you ever fail in a startup, and did you almost have your startup to the point of failure where everything was so bad, and how did you come back up?
Never failed once, but close to failing, yes. And there are many. In fact, I would say maybe I skipped the hard part. So yes, I think that's very good questions. In the end, successful does not mean along the path there are many points. There's no point at which you think it's going to fail, or you think you are running out of money, or this project is too difficult to carry on, or you couldn't sell this product. Yes, many times. But, for whatever reason, somehow we always find a way, get around it. So that's why I say, we don't really expect the project, doesn't matter how confident we are, how good we are, we still will run into a lot of problems, especially leading edge even the Anpac technology, as we are speaking, we still have more work to do. I don't want to present, only a rosy picture. So the key is really you have to be really confident in the team and in your vision, and not to easily change course. And the problems, in fact, sometimes companies fail because the founders do not have confidence in him or herself or the team he or she is working with, and frequently changing directions. Actually, that's much more detrimental than anything else. So I'm the one, really don't want to change directions.
Have you changed directions before?
Never big directions, never. Never big directions, but I can be persuaded to make small changes, but not a big direction. Not like, say, I'll give you an example. If I said with a simple blood draw, we use this we call the multi-level, multi-parameter cancer diagnostic technology. And once we set, we have never changed this overall foundation. Now we may revise certain specific approaches, but we never change the major technical platform because it takes time and takes money. In an analogy would be, I remember many years ago, I'm an animal lover as well, like my wife. I remember reading a novel. Actually, it's a documentary about a wolf, many years ago in Siberia. As you know, in Siberia, the temperature was very low. And they actually recorded somehow at one particular night many years ago, like 50 years ago, in a cold winter night in Siberia, there this wolf chasing a deer for almost like 100 kilometers. Now this situation, this wolf either catches a deer, eat it, be able to survive, or this wolf is not able to catch it, die. So that's a very telling story. And I think a lot of times, startup is like this. You have one shot. You have one shot. If you raise $20 million, you better make sure your overall direction is correct, right? Just if you do your skin cream, right? So you may spend, I don't know how much money in your formulations, right? If you keep changing your formulations, not only the time to market is delayed, but also you burn a lot of cash. In the end, will not be able to get to the finishing line. So this wolf only has one chance, 100 kilometers. So by sunrise, his fate is determined. And unfortunately, this wolf did not make it. He did not catch. So I read this when I was a little child, almost like 40 years ago. But I still remember this graphic. So whatever, so relativity, right? time can be dilated, So anyway, so what I'm saying is, we have, I'm not saying you shouldn't change your strategy, but I really think if you change a big strategy, we read, a lot of companies going out of business because of the too frequent changes in directions. And, but you're right, we always coming to, I'm not saying, the project we are involved is always smooth sailing. We had a lot of issues, fundraising. So, right, it's very difficult how you get the best people, how you retain best people, how you retain best people, how you raise money. And in fact, the better the project, in fact, believe or not, the harder to raise money. That's another contrary. In fact, the project easily to make a lot of money, raise money, I don't think are good projects. I don't think so. Because all VCs think that this project is good, this project does not have a bright future. If you are not, because it's overheated. A few years ago, I was sitting with a group of VCs, they were drooling over, solar energy companies. I said, don't invest in it. It's overheated. And they don't believe it. They invested billions of dollars into it. They all lost money. All those companies either went out of business because everybody run into this clean energy. I'm not against the clean energy. I'm talking about certain region clean energy really got heated because their revenue is from government subsidy, like in Europe, in a third world country. The business model is not sustainable. But everybody wanted to do clean energy. So VC invested everything in clean energy. Nearly all of them lost money. We have many of these kind of examples. So the problem with the VC is they always chase the hottest stuff. When you look at the best companies, like Alibaba, nobody wanted to invest it many years ago. And what's this guy? So the Japanese guy, Mr. Sun invested in Alibaba. Now he's one of the richest men on the planet because his return is 10,000 times. Because nobody wanted to invest in Alibaba. He did. So his return was like over 10,000x. Wow. When you chase a hot company, there's no future.
Lauren, do you have a question?
Yeah, so we in Sacramento are really excited to have your company here.
Yeah, thank you.
We're
Good to
looking
be here.
forward
Yeah.
to having
Yeah.
more companies come. And in fact, just this week, a Top Grade Healthcare, a China-based medical technology company, announced that they are making a move to Sacramento as well. I wondered, do you think we might see, is this a particularly good place for companies from China? Do you think we might see more Chinese healthcare or other type of companies coming to Sacramento?
I think so. First of all, congratulations. And secondly, I think it's going to be a multi-year trend. I think, globalization is going to continue because, it's not going to change because it's, that's part of nature law, just like entropy in thermal, in thermal energy, right? Entropy, you continue to migrate from US to China, China to US, so I think that's a multi-year trend. In fact, a lot of people in China made a lot of money and the companies made money. And in fact, we went to JP Morgan, conference yesterday, and they put China, as one of the 6 major trends in biotechnology. No other country, only China. The reason is, the Chinese companies are attracting, global investment to China, but also they coming out of China to invest in the United States. In fact, Jack Ma, is announced that he's going to create 1 million jobs in the United States.
So you think like someone like Barry Broom should send some people to China to recruit more Chinese companies?
Yes, I think so.
I'll let Barry know that.
Yeah, I think they have a lot of money. They have good ideas, but the infrastructures here may be better. I mean, the reason we coming to here is, of course, it has, U.S. is a big market, well developed, market, right? So in a good place for innovation, even though the original technology was developed, in China. By the way, Anpac is a U.S. company, and because Anpac is 60% owned by U.S. shareholders, so it's not really a Chinese company. Sometimes people ask, whether it's an Asian company or a Chinese company. So Anpac is not really, so we even have, a lot of U.S. investors, here in even in Sacramento. We thank, they are, confidence in us. We also have investors in Pennsylvania. So our calculated share structure here, 60%. Anpac shareholders, Americans. But the bottom line, to answer your question, is I think this trend is going to continue because China already has gone to Europe and come to the United States to invest in a lot of companies. I think MGM already acquired by a Chinese company, right? So the movie theaters, the chain movie theater, the largest movie theaters here is owned by, I don't know. You view this good or bad, but the thing is, they're going to bring money here to create jobs. So that's, I'm assuming it's good
So
for
here
local.
in
Yeah.
the U.S., do you think here, specifically Sacramento, that we have something to offer more than other regions in the U.S. for Chinese
Yes.
companies?
Yes. Yeah. The way you attract them is emphasize, the low crime rate, right? So and the low cost of living and the loyalty and the community, and also still with within 2 hours to Silicon Valley. So you have the best of 2 worlds, so right. So you don't lose anything.
We'll have to use you as a reference.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because
I want to give a shout out to my boss on this though. When I was first, as a lot of people in the room know, when he first hired me, we were looking at Silicon Valley to have our U.S. headquarters. And I took the job and then I spent like 9 months talking him out of it. But because I believe in Sacramento and everything it has to offer, it's so perfect for our company because we're within 20 miles of the best healthcare systems in the world. We've got UC Davis, we're close to the Silicon Valley if we need Stanford or Berkeley and some of those researchers. But the other thing that really struck me and why he's such a great CEO, he said if we put our roots here, we also want to develop a partnership with the mayor and a partnership with Goodersack and a partnership with our community so that we can encourage other companies these other CEOs from China to come and feel welcomed and well established here. So that was his idea. In fact, he even talked about us, once we get started, having a hosting CEOs here as part of a workshop to introduce them to our second backboard. Thanks, boss.
Thank you.
I have time for one more question. Russ?
Hi, Dr. Thank
Hi.
you for taking the time to speak with us. My question, I guess, is more in the early stage, just to kind of context. So I'm working on just it's very conceptual right now, but I don't have any formal background in my idea. It's in the automotive industry, so I'm not an automotive person. I just was inspired by this idea, and I'm going to work through all the startup mindset. But my question is, let's say you didn't have your cousin who was on the medical side, but you were still somehow inspired to mix your physicist background into medical. What would you, because I've been hearing from a lot of folks, a team is so important. A team helps validate you.
Right.
Now, and with my own concept, it's automotive. I don't really have a lot of background or a ton of connections in that industry. So I'm right now trying to think, how do I, maybe if you could give me some advice on how would you approach your industry if you had said, hey, I have this idea, but I don't really have a cousin or I don't have, a network right now of people that can, help me kind of bring this together. What would your first steps or thoughts be?
Yeah, that's a very good question. If I were you, I would, if I don't have, my cousin or my brother or someone, I know well from the automobile industry, at least I would like to talk to experts in the field and maybe even retain, after some initial, survey, if you are confident, you have something truly special, maybe retain a consultant. And so I think this question also kind of related to how you're saving your cost. Sometimes, people do not have to be full-time, especially in your early stage when you're not sure, whether you want to do it, 100% for whatever reason. And the best thing to do is maybe even purchase an industry report, or maybe go to conferences, or find one of the industry experts, talk to them, and sometimes maybe even free, right? But when you are more sure you need, you want to, get into this space, maybe you could initially, but you couldn't afford, we have the same, at a startup phase, we're all facing the same thing. Funding is always limited, right? So, maybe you can have someone, join you, as a part-time employee or consultant. And one thing, just along this way is maybe expand a little bit, if you talk to MBA people, they always say you need to have the best team. And it's only partially true to a certain extent. The fact is, if you look at sports, right? If you have too many stars, let's look at basketball. If you have 10 Kobe's on your team, you cannot make two playoffs, right? The fact is you cannot have too many stars. In fact, the compatibility is far more important, the depth of knowledge. In fact, I think almost a company will fail if you have best CEO, if you best CTO, you have best CFO. You know why? It's very simple. Everybody will have their very strong opinion on what's best for its own division. CFO said, don't spend a nickel, right? And the CTO is going to say, let's buy this $10 billion, equipment, right? So it's never going to work. In fact, I think as a startup, as far as I'm concerned, I only needed the best R&D team initially. Because, in fact, we have cases where if you have if you have certain CFOs, the company will go bankrupt. If you have certain CTO, the company will go bankrupt. Only when you have the right combination, the company, or if you have the certain type of CEO, the company will go bankrupt. So basically, you cannot have best, executives at every single position. I think this theory is new. I don't know, have you heard about that? If you go to Harvard Law School, Harvard Business School, they always tell you need to hire the best people. I think that's wrong. Absolutely wrong. These are promoted by people who never started started their company.
I didn't go to Harvard, so.
I think it's by Harvard professor who never started a company will say you need to hire the best people. That's wrong. You know why? Because 1 + 1 is not always equal to 2. It could be 0. If those two people collide, both of them are right. But at each time, you need to make a decision based on what the phase of your company. In this phase, you need the best people in that department. That phase, initially you don't have operations. You don't need a best,
You need
COO,
good
right?
You need good teamwork, and I've seen startups just blow up because the founders don't get along. So
Right.
you need good teamwork.
And so the teamwork and the compatibility.
All right, and my assistant is telling me it's 8:07. So my
Okay.
last question to you is, who's your favorite superhero?
In terms of technology or in general.
Comic books,
Superman.
the Marvel universe.
If name one, that's tough one. Einstein, I would say.
All right. You are. I just want to say you're our hero. So thank you. We actually made a video game of you here.
Thank you very
So
much.
you're our hero.
Wow.
So thank you for coming to Sacramento.
Yeah, thank
Thanks for
you.
coming here.
Thank you very much.
And
yeah.
everyone get
Yeah.
talk to you again.
Yeah.